Welcome to My Poly Life, where we delve deep into all things polyamorous. Once again, I'm Phoenix. This is my wife, Victoria. And with us, once again, is our co-host, M. How you doing?
Good.
I'm a little
It's been a
tired.
busy week. Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, who wants to go first about their week? Let's try.
Em, go for it.
Okay. How should I say this? We launched a new menu this past week, and it's been very well received by a number of people, so that's been kind of crazy for us. I'm still trying to push out more products too. And yeah, I guess that's the story of my life since I started my business. So,
Quick question: every time you launch a new menu, like every other week, is that a lot of new work, or how does it?
pretty much. I mean, like whenever you launch something new, there's always like weird or unexpected things that happen, and you have to figure out how to go about doing or fixing it. That's always interesting and fun. And as opposed to if you were to have something on the menu consistently for like, let's say 5 months, it's like at this point when you're making something, it's already like automatic. So yeah, just launching new things is always going to be a bit tricky, and it'll always take a longer time than pushing out something you've already been doing for a long time. So that's the story of my life.
Makes sense, and that lets me know we need to try to film on your off week, like your week where you're not introducing anything.
Yes, like this week.
All right, I got you. What's up with you, Vic? How's your week?
So as of today, I have a 6-week-old. So she's still a little itty bitty baby, but she's, getting into the swing of sleeping cycle. So we're still working that out. But, in the meantime, it's a lot of interrupted sleep. So I'm just a little tired from that. But overall, I'm good. We're still excited. She's a very good baby. She does not cry a lot. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
Well, she has a 6-week-old. She said, I have a 6-week-old. She left me out. I'm just here assisting her. But yeah, she gets like night shift and I get morning shift. And I try to do all, like my workout and all my work first thing in the morning. So it's been kind of difficult trying to do all that with the baby. It's been stressful. And she's really good until she knows we have to film. And then on those days, it's always a little more chaotic. But here
like
we
she
are.
kind of feels it. She's like, oh,
yeah.
Mom and Dad are going to do something exciting without me. Time to ruin their plans.
Exactly.
Mom and Dad are going to sit down to eat.
Oh
no, let's wake up. They're not going to eat right now.
Every time we sit down to eat, she pops up, definitely. But it's cool. Here we are. So I want to, before we get started, let's get into some questions from last time. I feel like we got a lot of good feedback. And people were like, hey, when are you guys releasing another episode? One guy said, hey, you had me and my lady started watching this. We started having conversations. Don't leave us hanging too long. So I want to jump into 3 questions in particular I thought were really good. Vic, first, Kim said, Vic, it seems like you just want a relationship with yourself. What benefits do you get from polyamory besides alone time? Because technically you could get that while being single. I thought that was a good question.
Yeah, that is a great question. So I want to clarify what I said the last episode. So I did say I liked my alone time. The point with that was that the difference between he and I, right? I'm a huge sports fan. I love sports. He does not. And I think that is kind of a lot of times within our relationships, we lose ourselves because our partner does not like what we like. So we tend to get distracted with, well, let me get away from that and let me focus on what he likes or what she likes, right? So my point with saying that was that, I still have me. I still am me. Nothing about me has changed in the sense of my core personality. And I can still keep those things even though my partner doesn't share those same interests, right? But as I also said, in that, he could actually go out on a date with somebody to go to a museum or something, or go to, go dance. I don't do dancing. He loves to dance. So, that was kind of the point what I was getting with that. Now, to answer her question, what else do I get from it? I think there are quite a few things, but if I have to focus on one thing that I get from it, it is the freedom to be me, right? And I say that in the sense of you have partners who help you to create these really great solid relationships, right? You have different people trying to help you to be a better you. You have a lot of different, I think, aspects of yourself that you get to kind of delve into with different people. So I think it's just getting to know yourself a lot better. So for me, that would be probably one of the biggest things I would say that I get out of poly, just clarifying that.
Well, that's good to know, because after reading Kim's question, I started wondering, like, wait a minute, what do you get from being with me? But no, that's good. Courtney had a question. He asked, how did Phoenix and Vic introduce poly into their relationship? And if we don't mind sharing. So I'll tackle that. We met when we were teenagers, man. We were in college on two opposite sides of the country. It didn't take us long to realize, hey, we were different from what we were used to. And so we moved in together. She came out to my hometown on the East Coast. We dated for a year with the plan of, once our lease expired on the place we had just moved into, we were coming to California. When we were like 19, so the relationship was kind of rocky. It wasn't bad, but it was kind of rocky. And by the end of that year, we weren't technically together. So she was like, yeah, I'm going back to California. And I'm like, you're not leaving me here, together or not. And so we had saved up about 11 grand and we moved to California. We got a place with 2 separate rooms and we dated other people. But because we lived together and our rent was like so much higher than we had ever paid before, we kept all our money together. And it was interesting because I started realizing, like, yo, we're dating other people, we're not together, but we keep our money together. Like, I can trust her, she can trust me. It was kind of cool at the time. Like, I didn't have to worry about, even if we were mad, like, I come back and all the money's going out of the account. So skip ahead, she had moved to Chicago. I had gone back to the East Coast. My grandmother was about to pass away. She was sick. I was helping out with her. And Vic hit me up and was like, yo, I want to come back to the East Coast. I said, okay, come to the East Coast. She said, no, silly, I'm trying to come where you are. And I thought about it. Up until then, I think I had still tried to have relationships that were based on romance solely. And when that phased, then okay, find the next relationship. But I realized that romance always seems to die at some point. But Vic and I had managed to build a lot together. We were, making 6 figures at like 20, 21. We had done a lot of good things together, and so we decided, like, let's base our relationship on the building aspect, the things we're able to accomplish and achieve together, and not just the romance. So to get to the point, we got married, and she looked at me and was like, hey player, it's just business. And she shook my hand, and I got what she meant by that. Like, it's not about all the lovey-dovey stuff. So that was how we got started. So we've essentially been like this since we got married, and we've been married a long time. How many years?
14 years? 14?
Since 08. However long that is.
Wait, we're in 2021. That's 13 years.
Yeah,
right?
13 years. And we've known each other for, 17 years? So, yeah.
Wow. Oh my
It's been a long
god.
time.
Sorry
Yeah,
for
I
that
really
long
know that.
explanation.
Yeah.
I know. See, that's why you're like, I'm a millennial. You're not. Technically, we are. We just met super young.
I never said that you guys weren't millennials.
No, you didn't say it as if we weren't, but M likes to throw in there like, I'm a millennial. So I'm just letting you know, like I said last time, we're in the club, but kind of pushing it. Now, a question for you, M. Jay wanted to know, he said, M, when you entered your current relationship, was the expectation that you were going to be poly or monogamous?
So this is pretty interesting. When I first started dating my current boyfriend, I made it pretty clear that I don't believe in monogamy, and that can mean many things, right? So non-monogamous doesn't necessarily mean polyamorous, right? Non-monogamous could be like, I'm just sleeping with you and like maybe 10 other people, not necessarily having like a relationship with others. So I established that, but then when that was just before COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, so like, and then COVID hit, and it became like, okay, this is circumstantial, right? At this point, how am I supposed to go out and see other people when we're supposed to stay together or indoors all the time? And at that point, I didn't feel safe meeting anybody else, like being physically around anybody else, because there wasn't much information about the virus and we're just told to stay at home and stay away from people. So before we have established that it was potentially going to be a non-monogamous or polyamorous relationship, but at this point, it seems like we're not practicing polyamory based off of I guess what 2020 gave
It's
us.
done to all of us.
Yeah.
Done to all of us. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Definitely. Okay, that's fair. So I think that's a good segue because many people have heard about polyamory and quite a few people are interested in exploring polyamorous relationships. That's called opening up, right? That's the act of going from monogamy to polyamory. There are those like him who became poly while single. I believe you told us last time. There are those like Vic who kind of came to that conclusion while in a relationship. So in today's episode, we're going to discuss how to take that step. You know, how do you start? How do you open up and transition from monogamy to polyamory? Today, we're focusing on what you need to do as an individual, meaning the inner work, the trait and tendencies to watch out for in yourself and others, and how to approach it, let's say, if you're looking for a new partner. Now, our next episode, we're going to focus on how to approach polyamory if you already have a partner, and we'll talk about what to do if your partner is reluctant. But stick with us today, even if you're in a relationship, because a lot of the things we discuss apply to anyone, even if you're just starting out yourself. So, to kick it off, I get the question often once people find out I'm polyamorous. It's like, well, how can I become poly? And I always try to explain to people, this is just my opinion. You guys let me know what you think. I feel like it's not about how to become poly. It's more about, do you have the capacity to openly love more than one person at a time? And because we're talking about poly here, not like you said, other forms of, non-monogamy. But I try to explain to people like, that's different than asking yourself, do you have the capacity to sleep with more than one person at a time? Because I think other people always say, yeah, I can do that. But when you say love of more than one person at a time, that takes a lot. So I think.
Sorry to cut you off. But something I wanna add to that: openly love and be honest about. I think that's the part, right? Because we can love somebody on the side with our partner not knowing, but to openly love and be honest about it with your current partner and all of your partners. So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. Do you have anything to add to that in particular?
No, I think what you said was exactly right. To openly do it, right? Meaning you're not doing it secretively, you're not doing it behind someone's back, because it's very easy to go behind people's back and just do whatever you want. Right? The main thing is how to do it openly and honestly and making sure that the people you're with are in the know.
Right.
Absolutely.
I agree. And so last time, M pointed out like poly people tend to think a little different. You were saying the poly people you've met, they tend to behave and think a little different or see the world differently, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk for a second about some things, like when you want to open up to poly, like some good traits, right? Some basic requirements, I guess, to be successful at polyamory. I guess that's a good way to put it. And I was thinking of the first thing is like you really have to love yourself. Because we always talk about that, like how can you love other people if you don't love yourself? So it's hard enough loving one other person, loving multiple people. You really have to be self-aware. And then I would say I think it requires a lot of attentiveness, because you have to pay attention to multiple people's wants, needs, fears, goals, etc.
Yes.
What do you guys think? Any other traits?
I would say communication needs to be something that you need to be very good at, right? You can't just be a person who shuts down, because shutting down, that defeats the whole purpose. It kind of gets you away from the whole being open and honest, right? Which is what poly is all about. So being able to communicate, right, in an effective and efficient way is another thing that I would say.
Yeah. How about you, and what have you seen? What are some traits that help?
I think it's very important to be a person who doesn't get jealous easily.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you are essentially sharing, and if you're someone who gets jealous, you get insecure, I think it's going to be a bit of a tricky situation, and then it will probably end up being one-sided, right? Let's say you and your partner are in a polyamorous relationship, but then you decide you want to control that person, how much this person goes out and do things, it ends up being a little bit of a selfish relationship, and it's going to be a bit trickier for that relationship to be openly polyamorous, or unless it's something that you enjoy, like like being the sensation of being controlling or controlled. Otherwise, it's that's a little bit tricky to navigate. Like I've definitely experienced that some people who are jealous kind, and it never worked out.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree. And, you know, I meant to mention this last time in the last episode we talked about jealousy. Like, we can't pretend that jealousy doesn't have some evolutionary benefits, right? It helps establish paternity of offspring, reduce the spread of STIs. It helps fortify pair bonding.
Yeah.
But to your point, if you're going to be polyamorous, you really have to kind of work on that. And so that leads me to my next thing. I would say the key that I found to dealing with jealousy is working on your insecurities, right? Because when you don't have a partner there to hold your hand 24/7 and validate all your insecurities, man, they can pop up and you can go crazy. And you really have to sit with yourself. And I always tell people, like, the things that you can change, fix those about yourself, right? Like we talked last time, I'm big on staying in shape. During COVID, everyone put on a little weight. It had me feeling a little bad about myself for those extra 10 pounds. But my point is, instead of sitting around insecure and feeling bad, every time something happens, it's like, hey, I need to work on myself and change that. The other thing I say is the things you can't change, just accept. Like, I'm never going to be 6'5". So what? I kind of have to get over it. But I think people really need to work on their insecurities to deal with jealousy, as Em said.
Absolutely, because I do think that's your insecurities are the root. It's jealousy is a manifestation of your insecurities, essentially, right? So I think keeping that in mind and understanding where it stems from, but it goes back to what you were saying in the beginning, right? Knowing yourself, right? Loving yourself. That's all part of it's kind of like hand in hand, right?
Yeah, and for honestly, yeah, the people who I know that are practicing polyamory are people who are genuinely certain of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And they're more, I don't know, it's more like it kind of almost feels like a almost hippie-ish vibe in a sense, like not hippie in a bad way, but hippie like
no, I know what you mean.
accepting, you know,
yeah,
and more chill. No one's like, no, this cannot be done this way, and everyone's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, and I think that's a cool thing. Like, I think it again shows it's a different way to relate. Like, I'll never forget the first time I experienced that. It wasn't poly, but just someone not being so possessive. I had just moved to San Diego. I was at a party, and I was talking to this girl, and she was pretty, but I knew her boyfriend was there. So we're having this conversation. It was a good conversation about nothing, but I just remember thinking, okay, he's going to get mad at some point. And he turned around at one point, interjected in the conversation, smiled, and turned back around and went on about his business. And I was like, yo, this guy's so cool. He's not tripping. Anywhere else, that would have been a fight. So
yeah.
I think that's good. And I think keeping in line with jealousy and insecurity is resentment, right? Because a lot of people, once they feel hurt, they'll lash out and try to get you back. And I think resentment has no place in polyamory, essentially. Like, you're dealing with multiple partners and their partners. So I think you have to watch out for being petty. For example, if I'm mad at Victoria today, but I have another partner, and I'm like being extra affectionate or whatever with that partner in front of Vic just to piss her off. It's small things, but just things I've seen.
Very costly, that like overall, because then it can start pitting people, like partners, against each other, right? Causes dissension amongst your partners who are, like, you don't necessarily need them to be best friends, but there needs to be some sense of understanding and community amongst your partners.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And then I guess another thing, time management. That's always important. And emotional intelligence, which was a big thing for me that I had to work on. Because, I don't know, when multiple people tell you, like, hey, you're aloof, this can kind of come across a certain way, like you have to listen. So I think those are some key traits that I have found help. You have any more?
Someone told you you're aloof?
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, because I can be. See, I try to deal with people when I'm at my best. So M's seen my good side so far.
Right.
But, I can run hot and cold sometimes, especially when I'm busy. I'm a creative person. We're kind of like that. So after hearing it a few times, it's like, okay, that's something that I really tried to work on. And that leads me to traits to watch out for. You ever met some people and they're like, yeah, I want to be polyamorous, and you look at them like, yeah, buddy, I don't know how that's gonna work.
Right. Yeah.
Not in a judgmental sense, but just traits. Like some people, for example, if you're just out looking for sex, it ain't gonna work, you know? Cause that kind of go. I mean, I'm not saying you can't be successfully non-monogamous, but again, talking about poly specifically, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you guys noticed any other traits in people that generally are kind of, let's say, red flags? Like if you were considering them as a potential poly partner?
I would say the people who are, it could be a little self-centered,
Yeah.
right? It's all about me, what I want, what I like to do, and no regard for others or even how they feel. Even if it's not intentional, I think sometimes people are like, oh, we can go do this. And they don't ask, well, hey, what do you guys want to do? It's, no, let's go do this. It seems a little bit controlling, even if the person doesn't realize it. So I would say, you know, trying to, or not being able to have a sense of what other people need and desire, it could be detrimental. Yeah.
I mean, I think most people are too busy with themselves anyway to really pay attention to one partner. So that's another thing. And then we talked about communication. Another thing, like, you ever notice those people who get really upset when their partner spends time with anyone else in? Like, those, my partner has to be my best friend type.
Yep.
Yeah, those people are pretty possessive. That's definitely not a good trait to have when you want to be polyamorous. Yeah, communication, like you said, Vic, is extremely important, right? So if you're in a relationship where your partner doesn't really know how to communicate with you, or like when we were talking about, like, just setting boundaries, you know, and if the partner doesn't know how to respect boundaries, and red flag, just like nope. Yeah,
I think that is a really good one. Boundaries. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, you definitely have to, especially because in a poly relationship, like, for me, I'm a pretty open person, but some people don't want to talk about their other partners or don't want to hear about, you know, your date or whatever. So yeah, boundaries are definitely important. And then I think another red flag for me is cheaters, like people who are used to cheating. I think that's a behavior that's kind of hard to turn off, because some people, for example, you can get caught in a lie. You see that your lady has, you know, or your partner has your phone in their hand. They know the truth, and you're still lying anyway. So, you know some of those people too, huh?
Happened to me.
Oh, for real? Tell me about it. Elaborate.
Oh my God. So, I was dating people. Okay, I was basically dating. I was single. I was dating casually. I was dating maybe like 2 or 3 people at once, because it was just like in the early stages of going out, right? And then this guy, he's like, I want to date exclusively only. Let's be exclusive. And I was like, okay, so you're dating other people too and you want to be exclusive? And I was like, and he's like, okay, yeah, I want to be exclusive. Let's be exclusive together. And I was like, oh my God, yes, let's be exclusive. That was when I was younger. Right? I had no idea what was going on. I was like, oh my God, this guy likes me. So, so that happened. And then when, so one time we woke up together, so I'm an Android user and I haven't used an iPhone in ages. But as a sign of trust, not because I initiated it, but he wanted it. He wanted me to be able to unlock his phone using like biometrics, so my thumb can unlock his phone.
What kind of guy was this? I'm sorry, go ahead.
He was the one who wanted me to get on that, and I was like, okay, this is cool, but you don't need that because I don't read your phone messages. You know, I'm not about that stuff. And one day when his alarm was ringing, it was so early, I was like, oh my God, we're both hungover. And he wasn't waking up to turn off his phone, so I just like pressed it like crazy, because I was like, why is this not turning off? Usually for Android phones, it works like that. So I just pressed it and I unlocked it. And then as you double click on an iPhone, like the middle button, it pops up like the past apps, right?
Yeah.
And guess what was open?
Text messages.
Tinder.
Yeah, Tinder.
You're right. Okay.
Tinder and OkCupid, and his messages open too. So I was like, what the fuck? So that's when I became or cussed.
Keep it real. That's how you say. Hey,
this is like gossip. I'm like gossiping now, but it's real. Okay, learn from me, guys. So I opened it and I was like, oh, I guess we're not exclusive. This guy just wanted to like trap me because he sees me as like maybe like a rare object or something like that, you know, like female chef, you know, like bisexual, you know, potentially up and coming kind of stuff. And he just like wanted to like trap me in this thing. And I was like, whoa. And then I confronted him and he came back at me with a, "You're going through my messages?" And I was
Like, dude, you told me to put the biometric fingerprint on your phone. Like, come on.
Goodness.
oh my goodness. And so
Yeah, see,
these
that guy can't be a poly. He cannot.
he cannot be poly. He's a pathological liar. And a year after
Yeah.
he married the girl that he was talking to. When
wow.
it was so strange. I just think this person has like I think he wants to be in a relationship very, very badly and doesn't care who or what you are, so long as you fit into his like profile of what he wants as a wife. Yeah.
Well, you
So-
dodged a bullet, man. You could have been married right now.
To a,
Still going
to a
through
pathological
OkCupid
liar. No,
messages.
thank you.
Yeah, and so that's my point. Like, people who lie and are used to cheating don't tend to make good poly partners, because I feel
Exactly.
like, in a weird way, like how polyamory is a lifestyle, cheating is a lifestyle. Like,
It
have you
is.
noticed, like, people who are into it, they're kind of always into it.
It's an art. Like some people make it
Yeah.
an art form, man. For real.
I know.
Yeah, so-
Skilled artists just like cheating and lying their way through people's lives.
Yeah. So
Seriously.
I to that point, I think communication is very important and transparency with polyamory. So yeah, the cheaters are excluded. And then I think one thing coming to the end of this is like, if you're looking for somebody to fix your relationship, that's another thing that we come across a lot with people like, say us, like we're poly. A lot of people say, well, I don't really like you that much. We're having a hard time. Let's add someone else to spice things up. Look, nobody wants to come in and play therapist to your messed up situation. I'm
Right,
sorry.
exactly.
Like, fix your issues first and then go about inviting somebody into your pre-existing relationship. Any other things that are kind of red flags to watch out for?
If you're not okay with being by yourself, you know, you have to be okay with yourself. Be, you know, not being in a relationship, being able to kind of heal. I think when you end one relationship, not jumping into another, that is like really important. And I think that if you see somebody who's like a relationship jumper, you know, just from one to one,
Like a serial dater, right?
There you go. Right? Yeah, that can be harmful. Not always, you know, because sometimes people just want to date, right? You can date multiple people, but I think when it comes to like I said, just the emotional connection, just like dropping, that's the stuff that can be harmful.
Yeah, I feel the same way too. So let's talk about like some self-assessment questions. Now, I'm asking you guys this because I've pretty much been poly since I started dating as a kid. Were there any real big questions that you guys had to ask yourself when you decided, hey, I really want to try this polyamorous lifestyle thing?
Can I go first?
Go ahead. Yeah,
go
go
ahead.
for it.
So, I think I'm pretty active on social media, and I've been on TV before. So those are a few things I need to think about, like your image, right? You know,
Yeah.
do I want people to see me a certain way? Or do I care if they see me a certain way? Or should I continue living the life that I choose because it's my life? And educate people on how to perceive this, you know, because it's always a taboo topic, like, oh, this girl was like, what's she doing? So it's more of like, am I comfortable with being exposed like this? And I realized, like, you know what? Yes, you know, I think I'm fine. I think that more people should learn about themselves and different kinds of loves, and it is completely okay as long as no one gets hurt, right? I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. I'm not wrecking any marriages. So
Right.
Right. It's real. You're not lying to people, you know? Yeah. No, that's true. I, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like, what value does this add to me, to my life, to who I am and who I want to be, right? Like, how is this decision going to help me to get there, to be a better person, to grow and to learn, right? Those are the questions that I had to ask myself when I started really considering poly, and I had to. It took a lot, but I think for me personally, because I had to really dig deep because of just, like what we were talking about earlier, just getting past your insecurities, understanding where your jealousy is rooted, wherever that stems from and why. For me, it was like, how is this gonna help me to be better? And quite frankly, it did, because I had to address a lot of the deeper rooted issues that I had.
I think those are two good points, again, because I didn't have that experience quite the same way. But just to your points, I think for the viewer, those are important things. Like, ask yourself, what do I want to get out of being poly, embarking on the polyamorous journey? Is it more sex? Is it someone to go to the movies or wherever with, or to do things that your partner is not interested in, like Vic mentioned with sports? Is it, as M mentioned last podcast, finding a warm, loving community of like-minded people who might be friends and or lovers? Like, there are lots of good reasons, but I think it does help to be clear with yourself what your reasons are, because that will help you articulate to potential partners, this is why I'm poly and this is exactly what I'm looking for. And to M's point, something I thought about, you were saying how you had to really think about, like, did you want to be exposed like that, right? This isn't quite a popular opinion, but it's my opinion. I feel like in today's age, we're taught that everyone has to love us and accept us and be okay with everything we do. And I actually think that's wrong, right? You have to be real with yourself. Like, it's not a lot of people. Okay, I won't say it's not a lot of people, but not everyone is going to be into the same thing, and that's okay. So, for example, we're polyamorous. My parents are in their 60s, right? They're super old school. They don't get it. They're Christians from the South, However, I've gotten them to accept us and be completely fine with it because of how I carry myself, how she carries herself, and more importantly, because I did not care. And I get that's easier for some people than others. But I think if you're going to embark on this lifestyle, Vic mentioned it, we were talking last week sometime. She was saying it really helps for people to learn how to cut out all the noise, because you can't be concerned with that stuff. You have to be happy. And as long as you're happy, healthy, and not hurting others, hey.
That was a big issue for me because, so when I was reading The Ethical Slut, I was also... quite quickly after that, I was reading The Subtle Art to Not Give a Fuck. And the combination was great. It was a great combination because for the most part, I think a lot of people don't embark in or stray from the norm because they care too much about their image, Yeah. And then deep down inside, it's like how they're I had to come out so many times. Like, I'm gay, right? So I'm pansexual, and then I became polyamorous, and then figuring all this out while in my 20s and in a management position in another country was like just a lot for me. So I had to read and ask a lot of people for guidance. But I think ultimately, if you become okay with yourself and learn not to don't give a fuck about what other people think of you, so long as you're doing nothing bad,
right,
and you are content with yourself, what is wrong with that?
Absolutely.
I agree. Quick question: would it have been more difficult for you to come out or open up, as a polyamorous person, had you still been home in Singapore? Because you were mentioning being in a foreign country.
So I wouldn't even know how to broach that topic to anybody in Singapore. I've pretty much been labeled slutty, just on my forehead forever,
The scarlet letter.
That's seriously just but what I found out was because Singapore, I come from Singapore, for those who don't know, and we're a pretty close country in the sense that there are multiple religions that people practice, and the majority of the population are probably above 30, And so what happened is that Singapore started bringing in a lot more expats. And what I found out over the past couple of years visiting Singapore is that the expat community obviously has grown. People in Singapore are generally more receptive towards the LGBTQIA community because of the youngsters, getting more exposed to, getting access to the internet and becoming more certain of who they are instead of being kept in the mentality where it's like traditional and you have to be like this proper Chinese or Asian person.
Right.
So with all this intermingling of different people from different nationalities, I think the poly scene is actually growing in Singapore, although it's not generally spoken.
Okay, it's still kind of underground, like here,
still
kind of
underground, but it's growing.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good, and hopefully, programs like this can help improve our representation worldwide. Because in Singapore, English is the language, correct?
Yeah, it's our first language.
So we go everywhere. Yeah, see? Okay, cool. So now let me ask you guys this. It's kind of in the same vein, but I was thinking if I could go back and talk to myself before I really got started with poly, because as a kid, you're just dating. But as I got older, there were more serious relationships. I was trying to think if there was anything I'd go back and tell myself. And one of the things I thought about was I would have early on tried to establish in my mind what the ideal situation looked like. I think by the time we were married and I started, by then I had the idea in my head of what my ideal situation looked like. Because it changes over time with experience and, different relationships. But I think that's a key thing that I would recommend to people is really ask yourself, okay, what would my ideal situation look like? And then try to go about finding how to make that happen. Don't just say, I'm poly, I'll date anyone and just do that.
Right, yeah, because then that would force you to find partners who were conducive to what your ideal situation is, right? If they're not into what you're into or don't want what you want, then it saves you time, effort, energy.
Yeah, and I guess...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Emma. Sorry.
No, I'm still learning about the polyamorous world. I wouldn't say I'm an expert in this situation at all. I'm kind of at the newbie level. So I'm learning from you guys as we have this, as this podcast continues.
Hey, we're all learning because I feel like everyone's at different stages, but it's still something to learn. I really sat and thought about, I think last week, Em and I were talking or something. She mentioned having an expert up here, and I said, man, I've been doing this 25 years. She was like, you're the expert. I don't feel like an expert because I'm still learning. But one thing I would say that's important for any monogamous person trying to open up and, become polyamorous is first get to know yourself. And it goes back to what Vic said earlier about, in relationships, you cut off so much of yourself. So you definitely got to do that. Do that and be intentional about what you want when you talk to people. Let's see, finding a first poly partner. Let's talk about that. Because I get the question often: can I be polyamorous even if I'm single? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you can. I think Em is a perfect example of what she was talking about before, how she was dating and everybody knew about each other. So I think it's absolutely possible to be single and poly. And
yeah,
obviously letting everybody know that you're poly and hey, I'm dating multiple people again. Communication, honesty, transparency.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm just asking because it's a question I get often. Go ahead, Em.
Yeah, I don't think you have to be in a non-single. How do you say this? You don't necessarily have to have an established relationship with somebody in order to become polyamorous, right? I just happened to grow into that role, and there were people that I would be seeing, but we weren't an item. We would see each other and talk about maybe our other dates, and obviously there's an intimate relationship there too, not just physical. There's an emotional relationship there, but we weren't an item. But when we were dating other people too, and we knew, and we just shared it with each other.
Yeah, I think I agree because there's a thing called single poly. So check this out. for those that aren't aware, single poly is when you're a polyamorous person, but your lifestyle on the surface is single. So just use M for example. Like if M were single poly, she may live by herself, but date 3 or 4 people. She might not have a primary partner, and if you just look at her from the outside, you say, oh, she's single, but single poly is a thing. So I would definitely tell people, don't feel your polyamorous status has to be based on how many people you're actively dealing with at one time. Just like M, she's still polyamorous. Right now she's in a monogamous relationship, but I guess it's like being bisexual or pansexual.
I get that all the time.
Oh, go ahead, elaborate.
I've had LGBTQ people even say this to me. You're straight now, right? And I'm like,
wow.
No. Just because I'm dating like an opposite gender doesn't mean I'm straight now. I'm still innately like I'm still pan. I just am dating like a male now.
Yeah.
It doesn't just go away.
To be honest, oh no, I'm listening.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. In the past, I was just gonna say to M. In the past decade, I've dated quite a lot of bisexual or pansexual women. One thing I've noticed that's not really talked about is there seems to be, I don't know, I feel like, and it's hard for me to speak, I don't want to speak out of turn on someone else's lifestyle or community, but from my own experience within the LGBTQIA community, there is, bisexual people tend to have a hard time sometimes because of what you just said. For example, if you're a bi woman and you're dating a man, sometimes your lesbian friends will shun you. I've seen that actually happen a lot, and I don't understand it, but it's a thing, definitely. Like, I've had previous girlfriends who were quite tormented by that. In fact, one was so tormented, she wanted me to remain a secret for years because she was so terrified, that her friends from college would find out that she was dealing with the guy again. It's crazy. So, I hate that, but congrats to you. Kudos to you for being able to openly live your truth, man. Now, I want to segue from that into first dates, right? How do you guys recommend going about mentioning your poly, like when you first meet a person? Because for me, like, okay, I have a couple of friends who are interested in being poly, one of my homeboys, and I always tell him, mention it on the first date. And so a lot of people's like, I don't want to, that's too soon, you might scare people off. My response was, if you're watching poly content, if you're thinking about it, if you're setting up dates with the intention that it could turn into a poly thing, I say you're poly enough to start claiming it and tell people, because this is just my opinion. I believe in telling people on the first date and not like later on after their feelings are involved or you've been intimate, because then I feel like it's not fair. It's kind of like playing a game.
Feelings are already involved at that point. So if somebody isn't on the same page, it kind of like, it's like where you're playing games with me, like you said, So
yeah, but is that too soon though? Do you think it's too soon? Have you guys seen it work out if you mention it later?
I don't think it's too soon to do it on the first date or in the getting to know you phase, just because it's part of who you are, right? It's like kind of hiding it. Like if you're bisexual, you shouldn't hide that if it is part of who you are. Being poly is who you are. It's a belief. It's in my mind, I think you have to be upfront with it and say, I don't think telling it on the first date is too soon at all. Again, groundwork, setting expectations, making sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I agree with Vic. But on like in another perspective as well, right? Like, let's say if I'm going on this date and I know that this date is not going to work out, I'm just not going to tell them anyway, because like, why? Share more about yourself.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but definitely during the get to know you stage, I would definitely not tell someone like later in the game, and they'd just be so taken aback and so thrown off, and it might hurt their feelings. Eventually they might feel like you're cheating them, like lying to them, because you're deliberately withholding information. So I think always say it during the get to know you stage. I mean, if it's not the first date, second, like, do it while you're still getting to know that person in the earlier stages than later stages.
I agree. Like, I had a situation happen recently due to COVID. I was getting to know someone and they were like far away. Like, there was no chance, especially due to COVID, that we were going to even get to be able to have a first date anytime soon. So the conversation was going a little slower, the pace of the conversation. And so the vibe was there, but we hadn't quite got deep into relationships. because like our schedules were sporadic and all this. So after a while, I started feeling bad. Like, hey, like I like this person, and I told Vic, I'm like, I need to find a way to interject this into the conversation. Just in the middle of talking about nothing else, because what I didn't want to happen was to go months and then it finally come out later like, hey, I'm married and I have kids and I'm polyamorous, because I feel like for a guy, you always have this stigma like you're lying or you're being a player or you're cheating somehow, and that was actually kind of confusing for me. That was the first time in all these years that I ran into that, where I couldn't just go out on the first date and tell a person. So it was weird, like, how do I interject this in the conversation without seeming weird? But I guess, I want to know, is it different for you? Let's talk about responses. Is it different for you being a pansexual person when you reveal your poly to a man versus a woman? Just the reaction you get?
I haven't dated many women since I identified as a polyamorous person. They've mostly been male, but I do have attractions to female. It's just, I think, as much as I live in SF and the gay scene is thriving, there's not much happening on Tinder for females. So
Okay.
yeah, there's just more male fishes in the sea. And I'd say, especially when it comes to men, it's kind of weird because they'd be like, "Ooh, that's hot," and I'm like, I mean, I'm not trying to be hot, dude. Like, that's just me. Some people just take it like the other way, and I'm just like, I'm not.
It's hot until you want to go visit your other boyfriend, then they're mad.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, not. Yeah, it's always tricky. It always depends on the person, and I think, like when I was practicing polyamory, there were like, obviously I had to like figure things out by myself, and like I'm sure there were red flags that I just like didn't really see. So I'd say I tell my dates after the second date at the very latest that I'm seeing other people too. But yeah, and I think in the city as concentrated as SF, like there's a lot of sieving out that needs to be done, and I don't necessarily tell everybody because most, like half the time, it's all people that I don't really want to date properly anyway.
Right. Now I get there's no need to tell them more about your personal business. Vic, let me ask you now. Vic is heterosexual. Not trying to talk for you, but I'm just explaining why I'm going to phrase the question this way. Last time we talked about you telling a family member you were poly. Do you notice a difference when you tell male friends or family members versus female friends or family members, a difference in their reaction?
Yeah, men are like, that is so cool.
Oh, you get that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember I told one of my male friends, he's like, how does that work again? Can you explain that to me so I can tell my girlfriend? It was interesting. Like, it was I feel that the men have definitely responded more openly and less judgmental. I think it's the women, because even like my mom, for example, I told my mom, right, and she said, why would you share your man with anybody? That, like, if it's me, that's my man. I'm not gonna do that. So she was very, possessive, even though it wasn't her situation. But she joked about it. She's fine with the whole thing now. She said in her mind, she's like, I just could never do that. And I think that's usually the response I've gotten from women, telling, like, whether it's my female cousins, friends, family member.
Like, that's really interesting. Like, I always want to ask, like, why would you never be able to do that? Like, what is your reason?
Conditioning.
Yeah.
Well, because me and my mom, right, we're like friends and mother and daughter. So my response to her was like, Mom, you remember when we were growing up and there were some parental issues. Okay, they had some tension in their relationship, some bumps in the road. And I said, there was a point at which you knew that Dad was out doing whatever he was doing, and it's the same thing, right? You knew about it, you just didn't like it. So, and he didn't tell you about it, and he was cheating. I said, but in my relationship, I can actually have a conversation. I can actually go out and get to know somebody, and I can bring them into my home if I want to introduce them to my husband and my children. So after that, she said, okay, I understand. but I still couldn't do it. Like,
and I think that's valid. Again, like I said earlier, it may not be for her, but I didn't know about that conversation. You never tell me about your poly conversations with your family, apparently. But it's good to know that she could at least understand, because that's kind of how my parents are. Like I said, they're country Christian people. But they're okay with it now. Like, you know, I can mention other partners, and they're like, okay.
Partners.
Yeah, like for Christmas last year, I have a girlfriend who lives in Milan. Every year she comes out and stays with us a couple of times. She was with us, not last Christmas because of COVID. Christmas before that, and we all spent the night over my parents' house. It was like a whole big thing on Christmas Eve, so we're getting there.
Family pictures with her in the pictures.
We're getting there, and I just want to say, like, just for the sake of transparency, you know, my parents can accept poly now, but when we first met, they even had trouble dealing with an interracial relationship.
Oh,
excuse me.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how far they've come, because honestly, people who know me know Phoenix is going to do what Phoenix wants to do. So I think after a while, they kind of understand, like, yeah, our son is very unique. But as for me, from my perspective, as far as revealing to people outside of friends and family, to the guys out there, or I have to be aware of how I phrase things. When I mention to a woman, hey, I'm polyamorous, this is my situation, in 25 years, I have never, okay, let's say since we've been married, who cares about when you're a kid? Since we've been married, I've never had a person decline and just walk away. Never, ever, ever, ever.
Wow.
And I want to say that, especially for the guys out there, because I think a lot of guys, when I talk to them, they feel like they have to hide stuff, right? I've never had someone run away. What I have had is, oh, I don't think I can share. That's valid. You're not used to polyamory. Okay, I get that. We can work with you don't think you can share. Or what I get just as much is, I don't know, because I wouldn't want any problems with your wife or whatever. And I actually like when I get that, because that shows a certain level of respect for Vic, even though they haven't met her yet. And I find that I can usually get past both of those things, and I've been trying to figure out why. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just making a general statement here. In my experience, I feel like women are so used to being lied to and cheated on in some capacity by a man that it's almost refreshing to them to have knowledge up front. You know, they can say yes or no, but at least they know I'm not going to play games and lie to them.
I can absolutely see that, especially in today's climate, like when it comes to like just the cheating and all the stuff that you see. I can definitely see how a woman would appreciate just the transparency.
What do you think, Em?
I think it's definitely very refreshing if someone tells you outrightly, like, hey, this is me. And I'm like, yes, I accept.
Or no, get away.
No, thank you. I
Yeah,
like that,
but-
you know?
So for everyone out there, not just guys, but I do think you'll be surprised when you tell people up front the situation and how they respond. And then one of the last things that I wanted to say is, like, remember too, especially if you're trying to transition from monogamous relationships to poly relationships and you're looking for someone, remember what makes a good monogamous partner doesn't always translate into a good polyamorous partner. And I think a lot of that is trial and error, but I'll let you guys elaborate. In my experience, most people aren't really wired for polyamory. So you got to kind of take it slow. Real quick, I know both of you guys mentioned, like, guys are like, oh, that's cool. One thing I'll say, let's say to the women out here, like, be careful, because some people will view that as, oh, you have no boundaries, so you'll just be easy, free sex.
Exactly.
Once again, poly is about the love, so it's not just the sex. So they might not be prepared to deal with your emotional wants and needs. You know, those are things you got to kind of look out for.
Absolutely, I would agree.
And then I feel like I've heard this from one other person. It was not towards me. It was just a friend. She was speaking in general. She said, I could date someone polyamorous, but I couldn't take the relationship serious. And so as we unpacked that, I started, okay, what do you mean? And we realized it was her fear of being hurt. So that's another kind of a red flag to keep in mind, you know, if you're delving into this poly thing. You may have some people who want to hang out and have fun, but just are not comfortable with letting themselves go there with you emotionally because of their fears of getting hurt. And let's talk about, before we go, let's talk about unicorns. Anybody want to give the definition of a unicorn?
I
Em, you wanna talk about
actually
the
had to Google it. You know, I know what a unicorn
I did
is,
too.
or like
I
roughly,
totally
but
did.
let me just pull up what Google said.
All right.
Let's see.
And I read two different definitions, so I'm curious to see which one you got.
Okay, GQ comes up first. Give it a second. So it says, typically, the sex kind of unicorn is a bisexual girl who is down to hook up with generally heterosexual, monogamish couples, often as a no strings attached threesome experience arranged in advance.
Yeah, pretty much how I define a unicorn.
One of the definitions that I read was actually on a forum. Okay, this so those people wasn't like a professional giving it, but it was interesting that the definition was that a unicorn is a person who is between a 7.5 and a 9. And they are basically down for anything. That's what the definition was.
What was this definition?
It was on a forum. I gotta show it to you. I'll send you the link. Like it was, and there were a whole bunch of comments on the link, and I'm thinking like, so people are really gonna think this is what a unicorn
But one
is.
person's 7 is like another person's 10, or
Right.
another person's 3. So
super subjective. So yeah, it was just like it was
Basically,
funny. So I was definitely
down for
wondering about it.
anything? Like, wow.
Yeah. That was the definition that was there.
Well, okay, so in talking about unicorns, the reason I wanted to go there is because another key thing, I think, if you're going to be poly, you have to be okay with not necessarily being the primary partner.
Yeah.
Because if only about 5% of the population is openly poly right now, that lowers the amount of available partners, right?
Yeah.
So you may find, as a new poly person, it's easier to find a partner who already has a primary partner or multiple partners, and that's a good way to ease into the lifestyle. But again, you got to make sure their relationship is healthy. Don't want to enter into any sticky situation that's already sticky. But then, how do you weed out the unicorn seekers? So, Em, let me ask you, because you're our Tinder aficionado here. Have you had any interesting unicorn experiences?
I have not, but I have seen a handful of accounts that are made for basically heterosexual couples, a female and a male, and they're looking for a third. And what's really interesting is it's usually an interracial couple that I see. So it's more like I usually find it as a white male and Asian female looking for a third.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. Maybe I haven't swiped enough, but that's the majority of the people who are looking for unicorns on Tinder that I have come across. So that's that's interesting.
Yeah, and I've seen a more diverse group of people seek unicorns, but I think the common denominator with the people I've seen is there are people who are, okay, let's say we're just in a monogamous relationship and we've been talking about poly. That's usually, to most people, it's seemingly the safest way to kind of step out there. Oh, let's bring a person into our bedroom and explore that at first. And, to each his own. I'm not knocking that, but I do wonder how it feels from the unicorn's perspective, because you're stepping into a preformed relationship. But I think one of the key components of being a unicorn that I've seen is that unicorn can't really do or say anything that inconveniences the established relationship.
It's literally just the sex, right? Like or
most of the times, but it's more at least when we want you, as we want you. And what if this person has feelings and they want to be involved more? So again, I just think caveat for if you're asked to be a unicorn. What were we about to say, Em?
I didn't know that. So what you're saying is generally a unicorn is it's gonna be a non-casual kind of an agreement, being the unicorn, right? With the primary two other people.
Generally speaking, but I feel like a lot of unicorn situations I see, there's one person in the established relationship, usually the woman, I feel, That's putting a lot of rules and extra stipulations on everything. So then what happens is the unicorn person ends up leaving because they don't feel their needs are met, or they can't really communicate openly and honestly about things. Or what I've seen happen in some instances is, again, say if it was she and I and we dealt with the unicorn and she had all the rules on what we could do, sometimes I have seen the one person in a relationship and the unicorn kind of start getting really close, to the consternation of the other existing partner. So I don't know, I feel unicorn situations can be a little sticky.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not trying to, I know we're going to get people in the comment, I'm a unicorn and I love it. That's fine. Don't get mad at me. I'm just saying what I've seen. I don't know. Any other thoughts to add before we wrap it up?
No, I'm going to do some more research on this unicorn stuff, though, because I didn't like that definition.
Check
that
the
I saw.
GQ article out.
I'm gonna keep on reading this GQ article.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, read it, and if it's a good article, we'll put it in the link below, so people can check it out, because I think it's good to share certain things we come across that can enlighten people. All right, guys, so just to wrap it up, making the switch from monogamy to polyamory isn't difficult, but it does require a reset of the typical monogamy mindset. As we discussed today, it's not about wanting to sleep with multiple people, but more so asking yourself, can you really love and be attentive to more than one person and their needs at a time? Now, if you feel you meet some of the criteria we discussed today, feel free to test the waters, but don't make it much more difficult than it has to be. Tell me, you guys, if you agree. I think when operating as a single person, it's pretty much as simple as being honest about your desires, your expectations, and who you're seeing. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. Honesty, transparency, and communication. That's the key, I think, to any successful relationship. But
cool.
Probably, absolutely.
Cool. So if you're in a relationship, please check back with us next week, because we're going to get into a whole different set of skills. We're going to talk about how to bring this up to your partner. If you're interested in poly, you don't know how to broach the subject with them. And we will also talk about what to do if your partner is reluctant. Excuse me, because we hear about that a lot. Feel free to hit us in the comments below with any thoughts or questions. And if you decide to test these poly waters, we definitely love to hear about your experiences. Send us any questions. We'll feature some more next time. And until then, remember to stay safe, stay true, and love freely. Bye, you guys.
Bye.